And so I was running on empty, I was confused, I was just feeling out of alignment. And these people just started to breathe life back into me.
And now we're gonna come back and build it stronger than ever.
Having the ability to change lives.
That's the true message of leadership. If we can provide hope to people.
There was no doubt in my mind 10 years ago that purpose was the key to the future of work.
Because we have a responsibility to make the great resignation the great restoration.
Davin Silvano, and founder and CEO of Purpose Point. Purpose itself has changed my life in so many ways. Individually, it's changed my life as a person, my career path. It's changed my life as a husband, as a father, as a peer to others. I just feel like the word purpose is so overutilized, but often so misunderstood. We live in a world that we're so fast-paced, we're so busy, there's so much unfulfilled potential. I think of how many people, they live their life, but they don't live their life. There's so much in them that they have to give, but because we're so fast-paced, we're trying to get things done, we've become human doings rather than human beings, that they don't take time to be. Find the moment to be, and not be so quick to do, because it's there that they ultimately get in touch with the deepest persona of who they are and what they were created for.
Stories are powerful. I'm going to say that again. Stories are powerful. Every single one of you has a story. The reason that stories are important is that we identify with stories. It's the reason we read books. It's the reason that we watch movies. I mean, is there really anyone that if you went and saw a movie and the ending was just absolute trash, you would be like, yeah, I'd recommend that to somebody. We got to go back and see that again. You know, you wouldn't. Why? Because at the heart of our humanity, we want each other to win. And we have the opportunity to be each other's heroes in each other's stories if we're present, if we're listening, if we stop and ask how we can help. The problem is we live in the fastest paced society in all of humanity, and we are constantly going, and you are going to be distracted by your phone, by your to-do list, by all of the things that need to get done while you're here. And there's an opportunity maybe for you to be the hero in someone's story, and you can miss out on it. Every company starts with a purpose. They have some amazing founding story as to why the company started. And so they start with this incredible idea. This is what we're gonna do. This is why we exist. Here's the difference that we're gonna make. Come be a part of our organization. Come be a part of our family. Come help us make this product. Come help us, supply this service. Patrick Lencioni, one of my favorite authors in the world, says the purpose of every organization is to improve the quality of human life in some way. And they start with this purpose, and they invite people to be a part of it. And all too often, as companies grow larger, bigger, and older, they start to focus more and more on process, performance, and profit. And they forget the purpose for which they began. They forget that they invited people to become a part of a story. This is not some new idea. There is a book written called The Purpose Economy by Aaron Hurst back in 2013. And I love this cartoon. It's one of my favorite things to look at. There's this tsunami of purpose. It's coming. And if you look at the cartoon, there's this building and it says BizCorp. And there's these people coming out and they're just going about their day. They're busy. They got things going on. They're checking their email. They're getting their coffee. They're going about their routine, and they're completely oblivious that the tsunami is about to crash upon them. One of them has his back turned to it. Another one feels a little spritz in the air, kind of throws up an umbrella and keeps on going. And then there are these three people with surfboards that see it coming and they're ready to ride it. You see, this idea of purpose is not something that was caused by COVID. The tsunami was already coming. COVID accelerated it. We suddenly all had an opportunity to think long and hard about who we are, what our purpose is, what we exist to do, and we were face to face with our mortality. The stories of humanity came out and we connected to each other over the past 2 years. There's 4 generations in the workforce. Baby boomers and Generation X, we kind of were taught, go to school, get a great education, find a company to work for, spend 30 years working for that company, retire, get the gold watch, and start living your life. And you see, millennials were watching us kind of live that life. Now, I happen to be a member of the Generation X generation, and I will openly admit to you that there was a time about 5 years ago in a senior HR role where, quite frankly, I was frustrated. And I said, listen, I can't interview another millennial. All they want is beanbag chairs and coffee and pallet walls. And, you know, they want to come in at 10. They want to go home at 4. I can't get a home. I thought they were the laziest people on the planet. And I was wrong. What I realized is that there was a motivation issue. Because what had happened is they had watched how baby boomers and my generation, Generation X, kind of built our lives. And something happened in 2008. What happened in 2008? The Great Recession, right? The bottom fell out. And all of a sudden, subconsciously, every single one of them saw their parents, generations, who was not home at the kitchen table for dinner, who was not at the dance recitals, who was not at the soccer games, who were working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, building up their nest egg for someday, watched it evaporate overnight. And subconsciously, somewhere, they said, not me. I'm not going to follow that plan. They might not even know they did it. How many of you remember where you were on September 11th? See, when the first plane went in, we all thought, well, there has to be an accident. I mean, you can't fly that low over New York. There's no way that there's no way this is, you know, this is intentional. But when the second plane went in, without anyone telling you, without the news saying it, without the person next to you whispering in your ear, everyone subconsciously knew this is not an accident. In the same way, the millennial generation saw what happened in 2008 to our way of life, of quote unquote work-life balance, and they said, not me. They started to change some things. They started to question what work is and how we should work. And they started to change some of the social norms of work. And we resisted it. A lot of companies resisted it. But then, as they became more and more a part of the generational makeup of the workforce, there were some concessions that were made. And as those were concessions made, there were some of us in the Generation X squad that said, what kind of makes them so special? Like, I kind of wanted to do that my entire life. Why do they get to work whenever they want? Why do they get the... And so what happened was they started to define millennial mindset versus millennial makeup. What I mean by that is the needle of when they were born kept on moving. You see, it was like, oh, well, millennials were born in 1987. Well, no, millennials were born in 1985. No, they were born in 1983. No, now they're born in 1980. Listen, I'm born in 1980. I'm not a millennial. The challenge is that the mindset started to cross generations because at our hearts, we all want to live out our stories. And in many ways, work kind of got in the way. But now we live in a different economy where it doesn't have to. In fact, work can be one of the greatest catalysts of living out our stories, of living out our purpose. Purpose is more important. Time is more important because the millennials watched their parents' generation's time evaporate, and you can't get time back. You can always make more money, but you can't get time back. There is a finite number on every single one of your heads. A life that you're supposed to be living, a purpose you're supposed to be fulfilling. And we make excuses as to why we don't do it. Furthermore, how do we as leaders help remove the barriers to help people become who they were created to be? Because that is the greatest measurement of purpose, who we help others become. In our workplaces, if we can align individual and organizational purpose, if we can help people understand who they are, what their gifts, talents, and abilities are, how those can show up every single day that make a difference, we as an organization accelerate our mission and our impact. There has been a lot of talk about the Great Resignation. Quite frankly, I'm tired of talking about it because we have a responsibility to make the Great Resignation the Great Restoration. It is time to help individuals fulfill their stories, both at work and at home. When individuals get a hold of it, how it changes their life, how it changes their families, the ripple effect that happens. And I've seen what it does to organizations, not just in terms of unprecedented growth and performance and profitability, but an immeasurable impact. Each of you has the opportunity to be a part of that. So thank you for being here tonight.
My name is Amish Shah. I was overhearing this comment from John about it. You know, in 20 years it took him, and he's got it figured out. It's my 26th year at ChemCrest, and I still don't know what the hell I'm doing. So talk a little bit about my theme, and this theme is really around what I would call the constant pursuit of better. It's been my life's journey. Let's explore your lineage. Let's explore where you came from, your family, your upbringing. All of the things that wired you. And by the way, when we're down there deep, let's talk about your trauma. Let's talk about the pain. Let's talk about some of the really hard things that we try and put away and never want to experience again. But the theory is, if you really want to truly find authentic purpose, you got to get down to the core. You got to understand where you came from to know where you're going. So here's the issue with purpose. How many of you, if I asked you right now, what is your purpose? How many of you can answer that question? Purpose is hard, right? Purpose could be, I'm here to take care of my children, or if I'm an entrepreneur, I want to change the world in some way, shape, or form. But when you really get down to purpose, like when you really have to understand it, it comes from within. So we knew we weren't qualified to do this solo, so we brought this amazing spiritual coach. And he got deep into our soul, but he took a different angle. His perspective on purpose was, let's explore your lineage. Let's explore where you came from, your family, your upbringing, all of the things that wired you. My story starts with my father. An 18-year-old young, poor Indian kid, and when I say poor, I'll underscore and bold the font, a very poor Indian kid, got an opportunity of a lifetime. He had a village friend of my grandparents that said, you can go anywhere you want to college and I'll pay for it. He was the valedictorian of his high school. Education was really important to my family. When you grow up poor in India, you can't do much about it because of the caste system, the economy. There's 2 billion people you're competing against. But what you can do and what you can always keep is education. So my father focused on that, graduated top of his class, and got this opportunity. You can go anywhere you want. So my dad did it. He said, sure, why not? So now he's got to figure out what the heck he's going to do. This was years ago. He's 80 years old, so let's go back in time. It's a true story. They don't have Google for, the millennials in here before there's internet. So he goes and he finds this stuff. And what he finds is there's an amazing college in this place called India. True story. And by the way, for the folks that know Indian University, it's called IIT. India Institute of Technology is like where all the famous, like the CEO of Google, PepsiCo, any of these Indian folks that come from India that are crushing it, went to IIT. So back in those days, my dad sees IIT in India. And so he hops on a boat. He gets on a bus. He's like, this is America. He comes through New York, and he's like, yeah, and he's going to Fort Wayne, Indiana, where he's like, okay, a little different. Well, the good news was, is soon after he did it, he became a chemical engineer. He meets a mechanical engineer. Pfft. You know, back in the day, the chocolate meets the peanut butter. That's the Reese cup, right? So they create the largest contract packaging company in the United States of America. Well, business is tough. I think we all know business is tough. So the deal is that when you're a immigrant entrepreneur crushing it and came from nothing, your focus is on what? Business. So this was probably the last picture that was ever taken with my mother, father, and me, because soon after, my mom's like, I'm out of here. My dad's like, I don't even know your name. And thus became the divorce before I was 5 years old. After this divorce, I actually went to India. And it was an interesting experience. Now, I was a little kid, so think about going back. You generally don't have memories when you're this small. I do remember a couple things. One is I went from a land of abundance. The US of A, McDonald's, you get pretty much everything that you need. It's here, it's accessible, it's available. To a place of great scarcity. If you really want to look up the definition of scarcity, go to an Indian bus station where 10,000 people want to get on a bus that only holds 80 people. You'll see pictures, right? People are hopping on the roofs. It's craziness. But that's what happens when you have 2 billion people. Another thing that I learned, and it was really interesting to me, and it was an early childhood memory. I was at a family event in India, and I'm looking outside as we're going into this flat, and there's people, just homeless people, like people that have nothing, people living in boxes, right outside of the flat. It was crazy. So I remember early on, I would go into the kitchen where the event was, and I would take plates of food, and I'd sneak them, and I'd go outside, because I'm like, what's wrong with, these people don't have anything. So my early days developed this sense of empathy and giving. So after being bounced around, ping-ponged a little bit between my mom and my dad, my mother decided it's hard to be a single Indian woman with a child, and my father said, I'll take him. My dad had means, he had money, he had resources. So I was raised by an entrepreneur that was on the road all the time. I was pretty fortunate in some instances because I learned a lot about entrepreneurship. I also had this whole sense of freedom. So when you're spending a lot of time alone, you can do a lot of things that you want to. This is kind of a joke. I really wasn't operating heavy equipment by myself, I don't think. The reality is it's lonely. There was truly a sense of abandonment, right? I was truly a lone wolf. So you build resilience. I mean, I could make a mean mac and cheese by the age of 8 or 9 years old. I did a lot of things independently, but you get this empathy. And as I look back and I was out in the woods exploring my lineage and my past, what I realized was it was that empathy that I built that I didn't want anybody to be alone. I grew up in the family business. So I grew up as a kid all the way through high school and college. And one thing that I remember when I was in high school and college, and one great memory that I had, was the break room. It was amazing. You want to really creep into the soul of an organization, go into the break room. It's where the perceived truth is, right? At least that's what people think. But you grow up as a kid that was a listener. What are you listening? You're hearing really tough stories because these are people. These were my family. These were the folks that I had grown up with. So I looked at every one of these faces as my family, as the people that I loved and cared for, but I heard the stories. They couldn't afford childcare. The car would break down. They couldn't make rent. They couldn't afford a car. They couldn't afford groceries. I'm building this business. Life is good. Things are going well. But I'm a lone wolf. I built this business as a lone wolf. I grew up with lone wolfness. I don't know what a pack looks like. I don't want people around me because I'm used to doing it this way. Well, you can only scale a business to a certain degree. And our business wasn't that big yet. We might have been at 100 million, 60 million, something like this. So I decided it'd be good for me and incumbent on me to learn more. I was super psyched. I wanted to learn finance and growth and strategy and all of these great things and get it back and get energy and build this business to a mega house. And it was the first week I was at school. There's something called integral leadership. And for my class, it was taught by Dr. Leo Burke. And Dr. Leo Burke was talking about things like self-reflection and gooey, weird, like get to know yourself stuff. And it was amazing. It was a monumental time in my life because it didn't just mean what I wanted to do in my personal life, but also in my business. I learned how to collaborate and build teams because we need each other. We're not meant to be lone wolves. We are communal people, right? That's how we live. That's how we thrive. That's how we get energy. The business was truly a force of good. It was my excuse to be able to invest in the community and invest in people. It was a great business. It still is a great business. But truly, in some instances, it's a way for me and our team that are very aligned in our culture to do bigger and better things for others. So I'll summarize a little bit. As I mentioned, my journey is what I call my constant pursuit of better. And my constant pursuit of better is part of my entire life. It's part of all of our life, right? We all are here to be better. We're here to learn. We're here to connect. We're here to engage. And so as I look at my constant pursuit of better, these are the things that I kind of grasped from all of those experiences. Empathy, right? The empathy. I was in India. I was feeling alone. I got empathy at a very young age. Perspective, sitting in the smoke break room, listening to real people and knowing them as real people. Resilience, being that lone wolf. You have to be resilient. There's nothing wrong with resilience. We need it to survive. Authenticity, not just a role model for my kids and family, but also because it's the right thing to do. It's good to know yourself from within. It's good to be vulnerable. It's good to share stories like this, right? It's liberating when you can share the truth about your life and what's going on and take all that stuff out from inside. You feel a little bit lighter. And when you're vulnerable, other people are more compelled to be the same. Collaboration, right? Through understanding a little bit more about myself and getting out of being the lone wolf and creating a pack. Courage that resonated from my father's journey. Execution from starting a business and watching my father start a business. Fun. I didn't mention this, but when I was early on and even today, fun is definitely important because what we do all day shouldn't suck. And if it sucks, you gotta figure something out. I love what I do every single day. I wake up with a smile. I'm driving this 91 Westphalia van, having the time of my life right now because I enjoy what I do and I enjoy the people that I'm around. I enjoy the people I surround myself with. The oyster never wanted to create the pearl. As a matter of fact, the pearl is created from something that is annoying the oyster. It's come in to the oyster's domain, and the oyster looks at it as something it wants to get rid of. Through its defense mechanism, it secretes this material that surrounds this irritant. And over time, there's this beauty, this pearl. My constant pursuit of better has been that, is to understand my irritants, the irritants in life. Right? There's two ways you can look at challenges. You can look at them as opportunities to grow, or you can be the victim.
My purpose is to connect people with ways to experience life's full capacity. Every person you see has had a wound. There's something going on in their life, something that they need some wound care, they need some help. And so from this point forward, I want you to stop. Most people say, I'm here for you, let's stay in touch, I'm praying for you, I'll reach out, and they don't. Spend time on people.
Paul Epstein, Chief Impact Officer, Purpose Point. I speak about the connection and alignment between your head, heart, and hands, because I believe that the quality of our life and business is based on the decisions we make and the actions we take. So when you think about the paralyzing pressure of what decisions to make, in a job or career, do I stay or go? In investment, do I spend or not? In a team, do I hire or fire? In a strategic position, A or B? And we all kind of step back. I can't promise life is easy, but what if it could be simple? Simple through what I call the head, heart, hands equation. And with this equation, there's only 2 checkpoints. When you have conviction in your decisions and you have authenticity in your actions, that leads to those daily wins, or as I like to say, just win Monday. And when you win Monday, it becomes infectious and there's progress, there's momentum. So now we win Tuesday, we win Wednesday. It's because I have clarity in my decisions and I have purpose in my actions.
From LA, Paul Epstein.
Awesome. Thank you. So today, as we see up here, we'll talk about leading with our head, heart, and hands. I believe that if we can have greater ownership of our mindset, greater authenticity in our heart, then it can drive more purposeful action. That is how the head, heart, and hands are all connected. So I started to think about, is there a more purposeful way of driving performance? And that was the origin story. If I was to ask myself, what leads to NFL, NBA, professional sports teams winning on the field? It's how they align their head, their heart, and their hand off of the field. And I want to throw 3 table stakes out there. 1, with your head, do you feel a sense of presence? Is about that awareness, the core of EQ, the core that drives us. Now, we think about our heart. I look at that as the litmus test of authenticity. Are you living life on your terms or somebody else's terms? And only you can answer that. And then with our hands, it's action. The quality of business and the quality of life is determined by 2 things: the decisions we make and the actions we take. When you can really make life a decision and action game, it's a lot easier to process. Welcome to leadership. This is your Monday. It's waiting. Your inbox is full. I saw everyone at that late night reception. I know your inboxes were piling up. Mine too. I get it. But this is us. This message of winning on Monday is a much better way to connect. And you all know this. Progress and momentum can be our best friends. When you win on Monday, you're more likely to win on Tuesday, and it starts to become infectious. And then you win on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And now you got a winning streak in sports terms, but in life terms, it works just the same. So with that, I'd like to share a story about a person that for me, and you, everybody in this room has that person. For me, this is the person that exemplifies head, heart, and hands. It's my dad. It's my hero. And I lost my hero at 19 years old. By trade, my dad was an educator. He taught at continuation schools, which for those that aren't familiar with what a continuation school is, it's a kid's last chance. They've been kicked out of traditional schools, they landed at continuation, and in most cases they've been given up on. Disadvantaged background. Your hope and prayer is they don't go on to become a statistic on the street. And after teaching in traditional schools, he chose continuation. So years after my dad passes, I'm in a barber shop a couple blocks away from the school that he taught at. And I'm in the barber seat, and in walks in this 7-foot-tall man, tattoos all visible, including on his face, which you know what that means. Somebody that if you saw in a dark alley, you would run the other way. And I totally expected to see a fist, but instead, when I opened my eyes, I saw a finger. A finger that was pointing right at me. And he came up to me and said, "Are you Mr. Epstein's son?" He said, I thought it was you. I remember you were on the side of the stage that I graduated from. And anyways, I just wanted to come over and say thank you. Thank you because your dad was the first person that ever believed in me. Your dad gave me a reason to think that tomorrow is worth it. I didn't know that there are people around us every day that don't feel that tomorrow is worth it. And in an instant, I learned everything that I needed to learn about my dad, leaving people, places better than he found them. I learned the definition, the true definition of leadership. And so here is my message. We've all heard the saying that before you lead others, you must first lead yourself. Because when you lead yourself, A, you own life, and B, no title is required. So if life, the quality of life and the quality of business is based on the decisions that we make and the actions that we take, we have a choice. Every single day, we have a choice. Strategy, A or B. Team, hire or fire. Invest, project, initiative, yes, no. This is a binary game. This can be a binary game, and these decisions and actions can have massive implications. And in the last 2 years, where stress and uncertainty and anxiety are at an all-time high, it makes this fork in the road even harder. But what if it didn't have to be? What if there was an equation that could tell us to go left or right, and we had clarity, we had conviction, we had confidence, there was purpose, there was authenticity, all baked in, and you can make the decision within seconds. This is the head, heart, hands equation. Head, do I think this is a good idea? Heart, do I feel this is a good idea? If both are on board, you proceed with the action. If one is not on board, you pause, you try to solve for the gap, and I'll come back to what we do in that scenario. If neither is on board, then that's a hard stop. So here's what I'm going to share with you. This is the signal. When you check in with your head and heart, there's only 3 lanes on this highway: green, yellow, red. That's it. The easiest one, my head is on board, my heart is on board, green freaking light, go. The hard part, the messy middle, as others have called it, is the yellow. My head or my heart is not on board. So 2 quick examples, head and heart. So my head says do it, my heart is like, ah. Anybody here ever had a New Year's resolution that didn't see the light of Feb 1? Yeah. Maybe for me, it's usually something health related. Oh, Paul, you enjoy the holidays a little too much. Sweaters are a little snug. I got to lose 10 pounds. Head's like, lose 10 pounds, bro. Lose 10 pounds. But here's the thing. I give up because my heart never made that decision. It was just a head reason. Unless they're both on board, how could we possibly consistently follow through? And then a red light, neither is on board, and we're taking action regardless. And you're like, dude, stop stressing me out, man, with every single decision. And it's just like, but here's the reality. All right, so your head and your heart are not on board. And you move forward. Is it gonna derail your life one time? Probably not. But 6 months, 12 months, 24 months down the road, we keep running reds. And let me ask you if this sounds familiar with maybe what we or the people around us are struggling with. Burnout, stuck, fatigued, not happy, not fulfilled, bad relationship with person, boss, or company. This is what happens when we run red lights over time. We don't check in with our head and our heart. And that's why this equation can be so powerful. It is so simple. The mission is to attack the green. Yellow, not the easy button, but now you know how to navigate it. And here's the thing about yellow, folks. Sucks saying this, but if you stay in yellow too long, it's just as good as a red. And then the red, we just need to be conscious of them and stop running them. It can be that simple. And so, as we close out here, I want you to think of that one thing you commit to departing the Purpose Summit. The one win on Monday that you are most inspired about. Think of that green light right now. One thing where your head thinks it's a good idea and your heart feels it's a good idea. What's one thing or one person that I'm inspired to do? Does my head say I'm on board? Does my heart say I'm on board? And if so, green light. Join me in a world of purpose. Join me in a world of green lights, because I promise you, if the end game is a life and a business of greater purpose, I believe that the head, heart, hands equation is the only equation that you'll ever need. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm April Hansen, and I'm the Group President of Workforce Solutions with Aya Healthcare. At my core, I'm a nurse, so I started taking care of patients as a nursing assistant at 16 years old. What healthcare staffing has allowed me to do is find a path where I get to do both things that I love. I still get to impact hundreds of thousands of patients' lives through the work that I do, but I'm in the thick of running a big, complicated business every single day, and it's a gift. When all that you really have left is the culmination and the summation of your experiences, it leads to authenticity. You show up every single day, not being someone else at work, not being someone else at home, and you find this connection to who you are, how you've been made, your gifts, your skills, and your ability, and then you just get to be that same person.
I believe wholeheartedly that decision-making is at the core of our businesses. Now, for those of you who don't know me, and Amber shared this, I'm a nurse at my core, but I've always had an identity crisis. But trying to be in business and in healthcare at the same time, I had to kind of choose an interesting path. And where I've found myself is in healthcare staffing. Now, the last 2 years have been wild. When we get the unique experience as a leader to go through something like that and to learn something like this, it's our duty. I feel it's our duty to share it with other leaders. So I want to take you on a little bit of a journey and kind of set the stage here. So put yourself back at February 6th, 2020. This is before our country really understood what was going on or about to hit our nation. I was going to, that day, partake in a Wisconsin Organization of Nurse Leaders board meeting. So I sit on the board for WONL, and I get in the back boardroom of this clinic building, and I get my computer and my notebook set up, and my colleagues are kind of chattering about what's going on in their hospitals. And I tucked my cell phone underneath the side of my leg. I didn't want to look like some technology-addicted millennial that I am, on my phone. And as the committee reports are starting the board meeting, I can feel my phone buzzing and buzzing, like an angry bee swooping at my head. So I picked up my phone, and I had a page full of notifications of text messages. And I opened the message from my most senior team member in San Diego, Maggie, and it said this: they just landed the second plane from Wuhan at Miramar. These people are sick, and we need you. Instantly, and even right now, the hair stood up on the back of my neck. I thought, wait a minute. So I packed up my stuff, and I let my nurse leader colleagues know I was just gonna step out and take a call. And I went and found one of those boring lobby chairs, and I kind of tucked into the chair, put my AirPods in place, and I joined what is the first of many that I now know, Incident Command Center phone calls with UCSD Medical Center in San Diego. Now, I was met on the other end of the phone with a brave but shaky voice of the incident commander that said, we've just admitted the first of what we believe to be COVID-19 infected American patients evacuated directly from Wuhan. He said, we've designated a separate wing of the hospital, a unit in the hospital where we're gonna put these people. There's more to come. They're basically stacking up at Miramar Marine Corps base right now. And we now have to make decisions around how we're gonna separate the nurses. And I kind of thought to myself, wait a minute, Is this guy asking me right now in this phone call to make a decision about who's gonna take care of the patients and who isn't? What are we gonna do? Are we gonna get volunteers? Are we gonna draft them? Are we gonna disproportionately put the risk on my nurses? What if they get sick? What if they die? And then the personal panic started to ensue that I thought about, wait a minute, I'm this nurse that lives in a town of 900 people in Northeast Wisconsin. How am I in this seat right now being asked to make a decision about who to put in the storm path of a pandemic of unknown proportions at that time? Now, normally, when a big decision is placed upon a company, what are you gonna do? You're gonna try to put together a strategy, right? You're gonna maybe pull together the best and brightest minds in your company. Maybe there's gonna be a committee. There's gonna be a 6-week deep dive and a perfectly packaged project plan delivered to you with a RACI chart and everything. There was no time for strategy. I had about 6 minutes. Now, it didn't stop there. Fast forward 1 week. It's now February 13th, 2020, and I'm crawling into my dimly lit home office to join the next incident command center phone call. This time, it was with NYU Langone Health in New York City. This call was completely different. We just got our first patient. The clinics and the ERs are overflowing. We know this is going to be bad, and we need your help. Within days, our company got orders for 3,000 temporary nurses, right? And what was really interesting about this type of deployment and the demand that kept building up on the system for more and more healthcare professionals for an industry that was over 100,000 nurses short when the pandemic hit, we had this sense of purpose inside the company that, look, if we didn't step up and help our nation do this, who would? And so as the days and the weeks and the months went on, how it started, there was this heroic patriotism at 7 p.m. and 7 a.m., blue lights ringing out through New York City, people hanging out their windows, clapping for the heroes. Fast forward 2 years, and now our nurses are walking out of the hospital being met by medical freedom protesters, right? So now this work that our company just endured in the last couple of years, now we're in the heat of a whole new fire. What we're left with is that there is not an industry that is untouched by the stress and the trauma and the pain of what we just all went through. Whether you're in this room and you're in retail or you're in logistics, you're in hospitality, you're in healthcare, you've never experienced turnover like you're experiencing right now. So you kind of think about this, and we have an incredible opportunity in front of us right now as leaders that are committed to creating business for good. We have an opportunity to be those change agents. What I want to run through with you today are really 3 big leadership ideas that when I've looked back at what we just went through and I've distilled it all down, it's not that complicated. It's about leading self, it's about leading others, and ultimately it's about leading impact through self and through others. So the first part in the Make the Call framework is to lead yourself. Because we can talk about other people and we can criticize and pull things out about other people way easier than we can about ourselves. So starting with yourself is the most important place, but it's also the hardest. I want to take you on just a little bit of a journey of how to discover what that is. You're at a point in time in your life when life was really, really freaking hard. So who were you in that moment? What was it that came up out of you and helped you put one foot in front of the other and helped you get through that challenge? Can you name it? I consider myself to be a master of manipulation. I can take the chess pieces to get to yes. That's what I do. Manipulation isn't always bad, P.S. That's what I do. That's what I had to depend on. And when you think about that for yourself, this is your sui generis. This is what puts you in your own league. It's of its own kind. It isn't your results, it isn't your impact, it's you as a person and the experiences that you've been through that you can pull up upon when you're in those moments. And so as leaders, not only do we get to decide how we're gonna lead self, we have to decide how we get that all to work together to create impact in business for good. Now, one of the biggest frustrations for a lot of leaders is that you can look across your company and you can put together a team of the smartest people in your company, but they create some of the worst results. Yet humans need to relate. If any of our businesses were only done by a team of one, we would not find joy. We would not actually find impact. So we need to get people to relate, but teams define their effectiveness through their culture. Team culture actually is defined as a set of behaviors that are either rewarded or punished. That will not produce the business outcomes that you need because it's kind of seen or felt as a system of punishments. Sometimes when you're in chaos, that is really hard. And in order to create the team to feel safe, you have to tell them, I see you. I see that you are actually swimming around right now and you're incapable of getting to that. I'm gonna help you. And in this instance, I'm gonna give a directive, we're gonna make a decision and we're gonna move forward. It might be wrong. And do you accept that if the fact, is that risk okay if it might be wrong? So a couple tips for you, a few hacks. Think about committees that you have or think about teams that you're asking to work together and then ask yourself this question. Do they actually have the approval, the authority to make the work happen that you've assigned to them? Or have you actually just outsourced some of thinking to this group? And you're asking them to come back and then propose things to you, and you ultimately still hold this sort of authority or approval power. I got my team together in a room in August, and one by one, we went around the room and I said, tell me the one thing that you think you don't have authority or approval to do, that you could do your job better if you believe you had it. And each leader in the room, in front of all the other leaders, told me what they needed. And I looked at them and said, you have my approval. You have my authority. Do that. You have the opportunity to create that safety that they need, and you will reap the benefits of the outputs. Introducing disruption is the key to business growth and to business success. If you're putting all of your time into just trying to fix what you believe is broken, you are not in this part. You are only reacting, and you may get outcomes that are like 1 or 2% growth, but you're not gonna get 9x growth. My CEO at Aya Healthcare is a master of introducing disruption. When I started being mentored by him about 5 years ago when I joined the company, I noticed he had a methodology to this. It was like every 3 to 6 months, he was digging in, swooping in to another unit, business unit, division. He was looking for where we got too comfortable in the business. And just because something works doesn't mean it's optimized, right? And so what he would do is he would sort of dig in. Do we have the right people? Do we have the right tools? Do we have the right processes? Discomfort stems real innovation. When you can get to the point where nothing is comfortable, that's where true innovation comes. And learning to be comfortable with the discomfort, with that disruption, is what will guide your business to true growth and to true potential. Leaders that recognize the need to disrupt, those are the leaders that make the call, and that is where impact comes from. How are you going to define your impact? Make the call and go first. Because that is our responsibility, and that is our greatest gift as leaders. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chester Elton. I am known as the Apostle of Appreciation. And together with my co-author, Adrian Gostick, we have a consulting training company called The Culture Works. So this idea of being kind, being grateful, and being of service was always how we were taught, how we grew up. And as I got into the world of business, it wasn't lost on me that the companies that attracted the best people and kept the best people and had superior results, yeah, they had great products, they had great distribution, they got their pricing right, and all those, blocking and tackling. The people part of the business, though, everybody, whether you're the janitor or the CEO, we all have one thing in common. We all want to be happy. And what brings more joy and happiness in your life than giving of yourself and simple expressions of gratitude? So, gratitude, it costs you nothing. Like, it literally costs you nothing. A kind word, a simple gesture, a simple thank you. When you are kind, when you are grateful, and when you are of service, not only do you build great companies, you just build a better life. Great. Hey, so is my mic on? Guys in the cheap seats, just wave. Can you hear me? Is that good? Yeah. So listen, I am so honored to be here, to be at your conference, and grateful that so many of you showed up. So it's really interesting, you know, my co-author, Adrian Gostick, is remarkable. He's the good-looking one with the hair over there. We've been writing together now for 22 years. We've written 14 books together, and it's really interesting. We've taken a deep dive on culture and leadership and teams. And the red thread through all of those, we never studied a great culture, a great leader, a great team, where there wasn't that red thread of gratitude. And the question is this: tell me why your job rocks. Well, really interesting. What does it mean to be engaged at work? How many of you have had a disengaged employee working for you? Yeah, people that are just a little more excited to leave work than to come to work? Yeah. Well, the Carrot Principle, we published all this research on what were the elements of engaged employees. Look at that first one, development and well-being. What you guys are doing today, you're investing in yourselves. I have a chance to grow, to develop, to learn new skills. Second was trust. You know that if you don't have trust, you don't have much, right? But look at that third one, pride in the organizational symbol. I'm proud to tell people where I work, how we treat each other, our impact in the community, our impact on the environment. Really interesting, we said, what are the drivers of the drivers? Alignment, we keep our promises. We say what we're gonna do. Trust is about communication. We're transparent, we're vulnerable. If I don't know, I say I don't know. When I do know, I'll let you know. But look at this, the number one driver of the number one driver was gratitude, that red thread. By the way, the number two driver of trust and the number two driver of pride in the symbol. When I performed, I got credit for my work. Somebody noticed it, somebody said thank you. A simple ripple effect, right? What does it mean to be enabled at work? Now, how many of you are big Disney fans? Been to Disney more than 5 times or 10 times, or been to counseling because you've been to so many? Yeah, yeah. And the thing is Disney an inexpensive proposition? Not at all. This was written up in the Wall Street Journal just a few months ago. Middle-income family, big Disney fans, save up, they go down to Disney World in Florida. In their family, though, their son was on the autism spectrum, and where he was, loud crowds and so it would bother him. So they could never stay the whole day. He would get exhausted. They'd have to go back to the hotel. Well, the mother tells the story to the reporter at the Wall Street Journal, says, here we are, it's a beautiful day. Get off the monorail. We're heading up Main Street for our day. Get there early before the big crowds show up. And her son with autism says, hey, Mom, can I have a purple Mickey balloon? She says, great. And then she has an idea. Tell you what, if you can make it all the way to the fireworks, because they'd never made it to the fireworks, at the end of the day, I'll get you a purple Mickey balloon. He goes, deal. She said the kid was amazing, focused like a laser beam, right? Crowds didn't bother him, noise didn't bother him. Saw the fireworks, best day ever. They're heading back to the monorail. Son reminds Mom, purple Mickey balloon. She goes, got it. Goes to the first kiosk, lots of balloons, no purple. No problem, lots of kiosks, right? You've been down Main Street. Second kiosk, lots of balloons, no purple. Now, autistic kid, how about a red one? How about a blue one? No way, gotta be purple. Third kiosk, no purple balloons, and she starts to panic. Enabled. What do they call the workers at Disney World? Cast members, they come to perform. Their number one core value is safety, physical and emotional. Young man sees that this mother is clearly in distress and says, ma'am, can I help you? She starts to tell him the story of the purple Mickey balloon. She breaks down and cries. He says, ma'am, I got this. Goes behind, blows up a purple Mickey balloon, puts a ribbon around it, and he comes to give it to her. How much do you think he charged her for that balloon? Come on, where are my salespeople? Supply and demand, she had to have it. Come on. I'm kidding, of course he gave it to her. He gifted it to her and created a forever moment. Was he enabled? Absolutely. Did he have to tell his boss, by the way, you're going to be a purple Mickey balloon short, dock my pay? No. I love this. People with passion can change the world for the better. Steve Jobs. Passion overcomes a lot of obstacles, because if you believe what you do matters, it matters. Well, we took a deep dive during the pandemic on anxiety at work. We found that you couldn't have a really healthy culture. You couldn't attract great people if you didn't start talking about mental health and anxiety in particular. You know, you guys talk about culture, you talk about leadership. Do you ever talk about anxiety? And we go, oh, no. Not my generation. No. We don't talk about Bruno, right? He said, it's all we talk about in my generation. We hardly have a conversation. We don't talk about our mental health. You guys got to take a deep dive on this. And so we did. If 42% of your employees in their 20s showed up with a broken leg, would you address that?
Oh, yeah, we say, take some time off, take care of yourself. Yeah, when you're ready, come on back. Somehow when it's anxiety, it's like, ooh, there's that stigma, right? There's that stigma. It's really interesting. So what's the solution? So my generation would say, you just need to relax. Just calm down. So the duck syndrome, we found these students at Stanford University that started calling each other ducks. We go, what duck, what's that? I said, oh yeah, you know, to get into Stanford, you have to be beyond extraordinary. Speak 5 languages. I'm on the fencing team and the basketball team, yeah. I've sold 3 companies. I know I'm only 19. That's me. And there was this, you know, this facade. And they said, we know that you're a duck. We know that it looks like you're gliding across the water, and underneath, what are you doing? You're paddling like mad. And you don't want people to know that it's this hard to look this good. You're a duck. Then one of them said, yeah, and I like the baby ducks behind the mama duck, because they're looking at all the other baby ducks and go, geez, it looks like they're doing great. I got to paddle a little faster. You're a duck. So you got to create this psychological safety, you know? Love the book, you know, The Fearless Organization. They did a study, right? Google teams, 150 teams, 5-year study. What was the #1 element of highly innovative teams? Psychological safety. I could speak up, my voice was heard. Love that. Well, you know what? You got to up your game to emotional safety. Psychological safety isn't enough. Can I be vulnerable enough? Well, in our book, we talked about, in our research, 8 strategies. We're not going to go into all of them, just a couple because our time is limited. But this whole idea of dealing with uncertainty is the #1 reason people have anxiety. They're not sure of what the future brings. Dealing with overload, that path forward. How do I fit in the organization? How do I manage perfectionism, right? Do I have a voice? Can I find my voice? Do I have an ally at work, somebody that would look out for me? Build social bonds. I've got a tribe, as Gary Ridge would say. And look at that last one. Gain confidence through gratitude. That red thread. Isn't that amazing? The power of simple gratitude. Well, how do you deal with uncertainty? You know, ask these questions. Hey, where are we heading? This is what your employees want to know. Where are we heading? How am I doing? And how do we get there? Do I have a future here? How do I fit? You answer those questions, anxiety goes way down. I know what the deal is. I know where to go. So focus your employees on what they can control. We can't control. Nobody saw the pandemic coming. Right? So what can you control? Depression is worrying about the past. Anxiety is worrying about the future. Well, let's worry about the present. What can we control? And let's focus our energy on that. Because when you have high anxiety, what's your first reaction? You pull back and you spend a lot of time alone with yourself, which is exactly the wrong thing to do. Do you have a community? Do you have somebody you can talk to? You got to normalize the conversation. This is a normal human emotion. You got to destigmatize it. It's nothing any different than a broken leg, right? And then the last one, empathize. You're not alone. You know? Break the stigma. Make it safe. So how do you spot it? Here's the thing. High performers in particular are really good about hiding it. Why do we load them up? Because they always get her done, right? They're not sleeping. They're starting to twitch a little bit, but they'll get her done, right? So look for changes in behavior. You know, like somebody who's never late starts showing up late. Somebody who never loses their temper loses their temper. No, I get you can have a bad day. I'm not talking about that. If it's persistent, if it keeps popping up. So how do you approach it? We talked to some counselors and we said, what language do you use? And they said, start with I noticed. Hey, by the way, Susan, I noticed that your work isn't quite, is there something I can do to help? I've noticed. And when you say I notice, it translates to I care. I noticed, I'm paying attention, I care. So anyway, one of my favorite books of all time is The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. It's the story of this little boy. He's going out into the wild, and he befriends this wise old mole. They free a fox from the snare. He joins their troop, and they befriend this big old wise horse. And they go through the storms, and they go through the wild. And the boy's exhausted, and he's on the back of the horse, and he says to the horse, what's the bravest thing you've ever said? And the horse says, help. The big old horse that no one would ever suspect. And I love the next page when he says, asking for help isn't giving up, said the horse. Asking for help is refusing to give up. Well, be grateful. The last strategy is gratitude. Those of you that study the brain, you can't hold 2 emotions at the same time. I can be in a state of gratitude. I can be in a state of anxiety. Choose gratitude, right? Leading with gratitude, this deep dive we took on gratitude. Now, I get this is the soft stuff. The soft stuff is the hard stuff because the soft skills are how you get people involved, right? This is no different than what your moms taught you when you were 5 years old. What did your mom and dad teach you? Remember to say, please and thank you. Clean up after yourself. Don't push, don't hit, don't bite. How do you do it? Here's some tips. What does great gratitude look like? Do it now. We know this in sports, right? You win a gold medal, you win the World Cup. When do you want that trophy? You want that trophy now. Primacy, recency. The closer you are to the behavior, the gratitude, the more likely it is to be repeated. So do it often. Now, I think that in our personal lives, we get this, and then we get into the workplace, and we just kind of disconnect. But in the workplace, general praise has no impact. You ever had a boss like this? Hey, great job. Great job, great job, great job, great job. You're the best, you're the best, you're the best. Finger guns just blazing. Gets very old very quickly. Specificity, why? And be sincere. Make sure there's some detail there, some specificity, right? And appreciate the family, right? I do a great job, that's great. You recognize my family, boy, that's really something, isn't it? Not one of the leaders that we interviewed for our book didn't say, and by the way, here's how I do it with my family. We have dinner, we get together, we ask each other, what was the best part of your day? Who are you grateful for who's not at the table? Who are you grateful for who's at the table who hasn't been thanked yet? It'll change everything. Make gratitude a part of your daily experience, right? And I love this, my favorite stat of all. People that are engaged at work and happy with what they do are 150% more likely to be happy in their personal lives. The ripple effect of gratitude, the ripple effect of being engaged, enabled, and energized. One last question for you. We've talked about a lot of stuff. You're going to take it back to your teams? Are you actually going to implement it? Are you all in? See, that's not quite the response I was hoping for. You know, as the minister of motivation, at the end of the sermon, the preacher asked for an affirmation from the congregation. What does the congregation say? Amen, Amen, my brothers and sisters. Can I get a hallelujah? Can I get a wow? I say we are. You say all in. We are. We are. We are. My time is up. You guys have been awesome. Thank you so much.
Dr. Amber Selking, Vice President of Leadership and Culture at Lippert, author and founder of Selking Performance Group. So I firmly believe that, like John Maxwell says, everything rises and falls on leadership. But I also believe that leadership rises and falls on mindset. And so the opportunity that I have to help leaders develop as individuals and learn to think right and then build systems that we know are conducive to human high performance is what gets me excited about this work in the world. You know, every day when I wake up, you know, I understand that my thoughts matter, and being very intentional with how I think from the moment my eyes open to how I think about certain situations or scenarios. And so applying mindset principles, things like gratitude, things like reflection, things like positive thinking. I know people think that positive thinking is this like soft, fluffy thing, but what we know is that the brain in a positive state thinks more clearly, thinks more creatively, and it problem solves better. And so I try to, again, weave these principles into my life and how I lead myself, but also how I lead my team and those around me.
Davin mentioned that we're at a very special place, that doing the Purpose Summit at Notre Dame is really unique. And so some of you might know the history of Notre Dame, but I'm sure many of you don't. And so I want to just share a couple stories on the history of Notre Dame and really how this place was founded. So it was born out of a vision. This is actually a plaque that they turned in, a former letter that Father Sorin, who founded Notre Dame, wrote back to Basil Moreau. The story is that Father Sorin was traveling west and got stuck in South Bend in a snowstorm. And so he's looking around, and all of a sudden somebody offers him some land if they build an institution here. And so it's the dead of winter. There's 2 lakes back there. He thought it was one because it's frozen over because we're in northern Indiana. And so he looked out and he said, wow, that frozen tundra is so beautiful. And imagine what we could create here. And in this letter he writes back, he said, I am deeply convicted that if we invest in this place, this institution could become one of the most powerful means for good that the world has ever seen. What's interesting about that, though, is years later, the very institution that Father Sorin created, the main building of the Dome, actually burned down. Father Sorin delivered Mass that Sunday, and at Mass he said, you know what must have happened? I dreamed too small. And so she had to burn it down to prove a point, and now we're going to come back and build it stronger than ever. The reality of it is, if we want goodness and greatness and being a force for good in this world, we have got to, one, have a very clear vision and be so convicted in it that we are willing to fight and build. And then we better be ready for a little adversity. Goodness, strength is forged in really challenging times. And as leaders, it's critical that we navigate ourselves and others in our organizations through that adversity in the belief of the vision that we have. And when we do, things can unfold, and beautiful places like this that truly stand for something beautiful, that radiate to the world that there's hope, that there's goodness, that there's opportunity, can in fact exist. And so this is a bamboo forest. It was really awesome. We were having these conversations around bamboo forest. At the same time, I walked into our chief sales officer, Andy Murray. I know you're somewhere out there. And he had this hand-drawn picture. You know, what Andy had depicted was that this tree, the canopy that a tree has, is really the impact that we can have in this world if we lead our organization with purpose. And then the stalks, right, are business growth and development. And then finally, it's the root system where leadership and culture exist. And so we put this image together because the reality of it is that most of the world only sees and values business growth and development. They don't necessarily, maybe they do care about impact, but they're not really sure how to manifest it, right? So that's sort of this like hypothetical thing that floats out in the air. But if that's what we're after, business growth has to sustain it, because the reality of it is if we don't make money, the doors close. And then we're not taking care of anybody. And so business is really important. But as we grow, what sustains our business growth? It's culture. It's leaders. And so the other side of that is that those roots are where? Underground. And it's really hard to measure, and you can't see it. It's challenging because this is the essence of being human. And we know that if we're going to sustain business growth and development on a broad scale, we've got to have a really strong, interconnected, and healthy root system. So my theory on culture development is that it takes a top-down, bottom-up, and culturally relevant approach to drive high-performance cultures. And so top-down, bottom-up, and culturally relevant, whether you're in manufacturing, whether you're in IT, whether you're in football, they have to be relevant to the people that are inside of your system so that it can take root. And what happens is when we follow this process, basically your whole system compresses, and the only byproduct is performance, constrained only by the talent within that system or your supply chain, right? And so as we think through that, right, top down, bottom up, and culturally relevant, I'm gonna give you 3 ideas for each of those top down things that we have to employ in order to make our business a force for good. First and foremost, your organizational identity. Who are you? When organizations don't know who they are, they drift. And so, do you have a very clear vision, a very clear mission, very clear core values about how you operate, who you are, what your point is in this world? And I would challenge you, don't just hypothetically think you know. Make sure that you've got words that are written down so that we can consistently talk about who we are, what we're after, and how we do what we do in our organization. Because that allows your people to get on board with you. Secondly is your messaging. So once you clarify that, can you see it around you? What are the signs that you have up in your business? Do they remind you of who you are and how you operate, how we should be communicating? And then what's your meeting cadence, right? How do you reinforce these things? Celebrate wins, celebrate people in that organization. And so again, it's not just like, let's be happy, right? What we know is that when the brain is in a positive state, it thinks more clearly, it thinks more creatively, and it problem solves better. Some of the biggest challenges that we need to tackle around the boardroom table will get solved at a more rapid rate if our brains are in the right state to do so. By weaving simple things like this into how you just structure and expect your meetings to run will help you reinforce what's important in your organization. And then finally, accountability. Every organization is not for every person. And so I read an interesting article one time. It was the CEO of Panera. It was titled, I'm sure he was thrilled with this title, "I wish I would have fired more people." is the title of it. And so you're like, oh, that's interesting. He sounds like a great leader. As you got into the article, though, what he was saying is, man, I held on to so many people because I felt bad for letting them go. And they lived miserable lives inside of my organization because they weren't the right organizational fit. And so when you have a very clear identity, it becomes much more obvious when people want to be a part of it. And who is the right fit for those organizations. And then we have to hold people accountable. That can only happen from the top down, like John talked about, right? Peers can't necessarily do that all the time. And if we allow poor behavior to permeate through our organization, you get the least denominator of what you coach towards. And so that accountability, again, is a top-down strategy. That doesn't mean we're mean. That doesn't mean we're disrespectful. But that means that we communicate expectations clearly and we drive people towards that. Some bottom-up, right, strategies. So we've got to allow our people to taste and see that this is really good so they can take a hold of it. Right? Without vision, people perish. That's top-down. Taste and see that this is good. That's bottom-up. And so some of the things that we can do to make sure that our people are owning this is celebrate. Praise to humans is like water to flowers, right? And what we recognize grows in our organization. So celebrate alignment to your culture, alignment to that organizational identity. Listening sessions. Are we hearing what our people are saying? Now, I would encourage you to just not go in and be like, so guys, how's it going? Because you get a lot of like, who the hell's this guy? So we have a really simple structure that we use to help generate more dialogue in these listening sessions. We do one called a well better. Hey, what are some things that are going well? And why are they going well? So we can replicate it. What are some things that could go better and how? What ideas do you have for us to make this better? And then, right, the other one that we do is a stop, start, continue. What are some things that you're seeing in our organization that we need to stop doing because it is inhibiting our ability to be a high-performance organization? Start. What are some ideas that you have that we should start doing because you think it'll make us a higher-performing organization? And then what are some of the things that you love about this that we need to continue doing because they're meaningful to you? And those help generate more meaningful feedback from your people so that you can make action items and get to work on serving them and building that culture. And then integration of resources. One of the most unique things that I've found about being at Lippert is that our leadership development coaches, our personal and professional development coaches, are actually integrated into the business. They're around the table with our business leaders on a day-to-day basis. And so that relationship that gets forged, that just in-game coaching that gets to happen through that is so powerful. And so it also allows ownership to be taken by their people to take ownership. Because my team is about 30, which seems like a lot, but when you think about 15,000 people, there's no way we can touch them all. And so making sure that our people have autonomy to have ideas, to try new things, to create their own community service activities and ideas is really important to get this rooted in your organization. What we know from a brain science standpoint is that thoughts actually change the form and function of our brain. And so what you see on the screen right now are two brain scans, where the brain on the left is a brain that's highly stressed or depressed, and the brain on the right is a brain in optimal functioning. These brain scans are literally generated by what we think about. Our thoughts, again, are like mental reps for our brain. We lift weights, our muscles get bigger. We repeat thoughts, our brain actually starts to change. After some of our first mental performance sessions here, I was out on the practice field and one of our guys came up and he like draped his arm around me, looked down, because they are much bigger than me. And he's like, "Doc, I've never thought so much about what I've been thinking about." Because he started to recognize that every thought we have matters, because it's changing the form and function of our brain. So how do we think about leadership? How do we think about our roles in our organizations? Or like you have a conversation with somebody and you're going through a really challenging time and you leave them and your problem isn't solved, but you have a deep sense of peace anyway. That's their heart energy. And then there's those people. You leave them and you're like, "Sweet Lord Jesus, I need a nap." Because they just like suck the life right out of you. John Gordon calls those energy vampires. That's their heart energy. And then there's those some people you sort of forget you talk to them because they don't have much going on, high or low. That too is their heart energy. The good news is our mindset drives our heart set. And we get to choose and control our mindset because we get to choose and control our thoughts. And as we start to change how we think about the role of leadership in our organizations, in our families, in our worlds, all of a sudden we really do set ourselves up to make business a force for good in the world. And so I'll leave you with one of my favorite quotes. I'm sure many of you have heard this before, because at the end of the day, while all of this is awesome, it's challenging to do. And Roosevelt said that it's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust, sweat, and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those poor and timid souls that know neither victory nor defeat. You all are in the arena, or you wouldn't be here tonight. Keep fighting the good fight. Be intentional about finding specific things that you can take back and implement, top down, bottom up, and culturally relevant. And when we do, the rate of transformation just happens, because this is how human beings are created and wired to show up and deliver their best. So have an amazing conference, and let's continue to be a force for good together.
I'm truly glad to be here tonight. We have a lot of our Lippert team members here tonight, which is fantastic. Investing in personal growth for all team members is directly correlated to more business success. In our business, we require our leaders to do leadership action plans. So our formula is really simple. The more team members and leaders we have doing leadership action plans in our business, the more successful our business is going to be. Nobody's going to argue with the fact that if 2,000 of our people are engaged in leadership action plans versus 5, which version of our company is going to have more success? So you can't do culture without dedicating resources. I would encourage you, whether you're 20 team members or whether you're 400 team members or 40,000 team members, start with 1. This is just a little pictorial of, our journey, our cultural journey. So long and short, real quick, first 15 years of our business. I grew up in Central Michigan. I went to school at Miami University in Ohio, Oxford, Ohio. A few weeks before I graduated, I called my father and I said, hey, look, I think I want to come to the manufacturing business and work. He said, fine. And we were just moving on an RV chassis project. My dad had just sold the business. And over the next 20 years, after we started our RV strategy, we grew from a small $100 million business to about a $5 billion business. We moved from 800 team members to about 15,000 team members. About 100 different divisions that in 30 different states with 12 different countries, and we build thousands of products literally for the RV and the marine businesses, but also the specialty vehicle businesses. As we couldn't get that kind of growth had we not taken the culture pivot and the culture journey that we did, that I'll get into here in a minute. Our first decade of lightning growth looked a little bit different than the second decade. We focused on just outworking every competitor we could find. That was good for a time, but by 2006, 2007, we realized we were burning through about 7,000 team members a year in turnover. It was about 150%. We just thought that was what success required. We thought that was the effort that it took. We all get stuck in our careers. For me, that point was in 2011, and I think the answer to the prayer came in my inbox one day, in a form of a TED Talk called Truly Human Leadership by Bob Chapman. He was the CEO of a large manufacturing company at the time, and I'm embarrassed to say this, but I started stalking Bob. I started calling him, I started emailing him. He finally picked up the phone and answered, and we had several conversations, and I was really interested in what made his journey click, what worked, what didn't, so that we didn't have to make a lot of the same mistakes, because I knew at that point in time, after watching his Truly Human Leadership TED Talk, that's the direction we wanted to go. He said, Jason, you've got thousands of people that work for you. They give you 40 to 50 hours a week, every single week. And he's like, how are you stewarding the lives of the people that you're privileged to lead? So it really made me realize that, we've got this business strategy out there, and we've got people somewhere down here in the back seat. And it's like, how do you bring them up and take them for the ride and pour into them and transform their lives? If we're going to be successful and keep growing and get further than where we were, we had to have culture at the center of our business, at the foundation of our business. We had to have caring at the foundation of our business. He said we had to have values at the foundation of our business. He said that we had to have people-centered thinking and acting at the center of our business. And ultimately, he said, when this happens, a lot of cool things happen. People get inspired to be at the business. They start getting passionate. They start bringing more energy to the business. Retention starts to go up. Attrition starts to go down. And when all that happens, you get this great momentum where quality, safety, efficiency, and innovation all get better in the business, because you're not spending all this time churning through thousands of people that you need to run the business, because they're deciding to stay, because now the environment's inspiring and they're bringing energy to the business. If 88% of the people feel like they work for a company that doesn't care about them, what does that tell you about how effective we're leading, how effective the businesses are today? So we talk about that all the time. One of the other things he told me is that business strategy and the people strategy need to be in harmony. So he said early on, every business, kind of has business strategy and performance and metrics and financial goals up here. They're up here, then the people are going to take a back seat somewhere. And wherever they're at, whether they're here or here, it's the back seat. So how do you make people feel cared for? How do you bring them up and take them along with the business strategy and do both in tandem? And he said, by the way, you can't make culture and people strategy so top shelf that the business strategy falls away, because then you have no business and ultimately you have no people. So the trick is getting, business strategy and your people strategy in harmony. Yeah, when we do culture right, it's inspiring and it's healthy and people are learning and growing and developing, yeah, we get this amazing momentum with efficiency and innovation and quality and safety. But the other thing that happens is when people are led well and they're inspired in the business, they go home and they lead their families. It's true. The converse of that is, people live in a mildly or highly toxic work environment. They're frustrated all day. They're stressed out all day. Most of you have probably worked in a job like that at some point in your career. You know what I'm talking about. And again, you fall back to the 88% of the people that feel like they work for a company that doesn't care about them. How do you think those people go home at night? And how does that play out for their spouses and their kids? And I tell you, first and foremost, you just got to deliver on values. John Gordon said something, every company in this country has a mission statement, but I find very, very few companies that actually have people on a mission or following the values. So that's the trick. Everybody puts the mission and the vision and the values on the wall, but very few companies are staying aligned and being consistent and holding people accountable. So how are you going to do that? You can't just have the CEO or the president or the top level leaders in the business do it. You have to have everybody involved. But to everybody involved, you got to get everybody on board. So we simply say, let's coach them up and try to get them to a place quick where they're aligned and they're being held accountable, or let's coach them respectfully out of the business because if they stay, it's just going to create more problems. Here's why the HR thing is a problem. HR has a pretty significant responsibility today. There's 12 significant functions. So if you're going to tell me that the most important part of the company, culture and leadership development, needs to be HR's thing, how are they going to fit it in and make it the most important thing? I don't think they can. And in our business, we've separated the two. They work together, they're partners, but we separate it so we can have this focus on culture and leadership development. If the HR strategy for owning culture is working so well, then why do 88% of the people in this country feel like they work for a company that doesn't care about them? Doesn't mean HR is doing the job. It means they can't do the job. It's too much. It's too important. Another thing we've learned that's really important is just optimize the front line. So I know there's a lot of manufacturing businesses here today, and this is a really important one for you guys. In our business, and in your businesses, 95% of your people are on the front lines of your business making parts or leading people that are making parts. So we look at it real simply and say there's 1,300 frontline leaders in our business leading 13,000 people. So that's 95% of our work population. If we don't get culture right with those 1,300 people that are leading the 13,000, forget going on a culture journey. You're never going to get there. And then culture requires a lot of innovation, and I'd say that this is probably the funnest part for everybody as I've talked to people that have gone on culture journeys because work is so broken today, and we're doing it wrong, most companies, it gives you guys the flexibility and freedom to create and develop, and when you get everybody involved, it becomes really fun to, create a different way of what work could look like. Leaders typically feel that they got to do all the talking, that they got to give all the direction, and I'd encourage you to just, when you see that happening, to stop that in its tracks. If the most important part about effective communication is listening. So if your leaders aren't listening to their people, then that's a good coaching opportunity. So that's sticky. When you do things for your team members and you show them that you care, and again, you got to show them. You can't just talk. You can't just talk about values and, hey, we do this and we do that, or we should do this. And pretty incredible things happen. And you learn a lot about your team members and develop meaningful relationships. Yeah. The other thing is the words you use matter. People blow through this one all the time, but if you're going to get into detail about how to improve your culture, and it's one of the things Bob said early on when I met with him. He's like, don't ever use the word employees. And I'm like, okay. He's like, it's a benign term and it's not inspirational. He's like, it doesn't mean anything to anybody. Say, stop using it. So I said, good point. We'll stop doing that. We call all of our team members, family, whatever. And he also said, do you like to be supervised, bossed, or managed? And I was like, no. He goes, so why do we call our leaders supervisors, bosses, and managers? And I said, another good point. So we use leader in all of our titles. Another one is you can't lead without loving. If you guys all think of one person that is one of the most standout leaders you've had in your career, I'd tell you that they probably were loving and caring and took care of the people around them. Well, that's what your leaders need to look like. Make that your gold standard. I know a lot of people recognize. All I tell you to do is, recognize your team members more. Go all the way down to the front lines. Do it double or triple amount of the times that you're doing it today. Do it on social. Do it in person. But appreciate and recognize people around your business for the great things that they do. Measure what other companies don't. We measure family improvements. We measure marriage improvements. We measure weight loss. We measure, financial improvements. First-time homes for people, which is a big dream of people's as we've gone through some of the dream sessions. smoking cessations and weight loss and things like that. So, you know, again, innovate, do things that other companies are not. We talk about business as a force for good. We coined that term a handful of years ago, and people always ask what it means. And really simply, it means that, you know, we're using the business to help the community. These leaders, men and women around our business, they start leading themselves better, they start getting more inspired, and they go home and they take that to their families, and that's only gonna make the world a better place. You know, what are you most proud of after your, you know, 27 years of being in the business and doing all this cool stuff and the growth? And I always say, hey, look, I've got a box of 500 letters in my office, a little cardboard box. People send me 1 or 2 a week, and they're always highlighting something. All these letters highlight something that some leader in our business did for them to improve their life and impact their life, and in some cases, really transform their life because they led them well, they cared about them. And I've heard everything from, you know, I'm learning to lead better at work, and I'm taking that home, and I'm leading my family better. I'm a better husband. I'm a better wife. I'm a better father, a better mother. All those things are amazing. In the most extreme cases, I've got 3 of these letters where people have written me saying, I just came to the company. I was contemplating suicide, and people around me immediately latched onto me. They cared about me. I noticed this place was different, and it gave me hope. And I think that's the true message of leadership. If we can provide hope to people, that's what the world needs, and that's what's going to change the world and make businesses a force for good.
Rich Sheridan, CEO and Chief Storyteller at Menlo Innovations. I wanted to share with the audience here how it is that leaders can communicate more effectively with their team through the joyful art of storytelling. Leadership is storytelling. Storytelling is where we connect heart to mind, body to spirit, concept to reality. These are the ways we can make people actually feel what it is we're trying to accomplish and the purpose of our organizations.
I'd like to introduce Rich Sheridan.
We are here to change people's lives in a very positive way, and I believe storytelling is the way to get there. Let me tell you a little bit of my life story. It is as a technologist. I touched a computer for the first time way back in 1971. I'm not that old. I was a kid back then. And they worked a little differently back in those days. I typed a 2-line program into the computer, typed the word run, and it clacked out, "Hi, Rich," on a roll of paper, because that's how they used to work in those days. And I was hooked. I knew what I wanted to do the rest of my days. I thought this software thing was going to be really cool. By 1973, I typed all the Major League Baseball players into the computer so my friends and I could play fantasy baseball with one another. Yep, you're looking at the guy who invented that game. My life is littered with lost opportunities like that. I got a couple of degrees in computer science and engineering, and I launched a career that by all external measures, probably like many of you, looked perfect. I had everything the world measures as success: job, title, authority, team size, stock options, every year, bigger office, bigger paycheck, all the things the world says success. And yet there was a far more important line, one that probably brings you here today, one that often looks like this. My heart was breaking for a career that I thought would carry me for a lifetime. And by my mid-30s, I was scared. This was the thing that was feeding my family, keeping a roof over our heads, and I didn't want to be in the industry anymore. I looked ahead 30 years and I said, I can't do this for another 30 years and survive. Now, I did have an escape plan. Plan B was canoe camp, Boundary Waters of Minnesota. I was going to move my wife and 3 daughters up there. She still laughs at me to this day. But I will tell you, there'll be at least one guy, typically, in this group that will catch up with me afterwards and say, how far did you get with the canoe camp idea? Do you have a business plan? But my inner optimist kicked in. People who know me well would probably put chief optimist on my story card as well, on my business card. And And I decided I was stuck in a room full of manure, and there had to be a pony in this room somewhere. And I think that's why you're here, because you think there's a pony in the room. You're all crazy people. You're crazy like I am. I believed there was a better way of doing things than was customary. I was determined to find it. In 1999, I read a book, I saw a video, and I met a guy, and it was a click moment. And I changed everything. And over the next 2 years, I transformed a tired old public company into something that looks like Menlo does today. And in 2001, boom, gone. I lost everything in 2001. We are not here together thinking about purpose, trying to find the perfect setting dial for bureaucracy. What I learned is you can throw this picture away entirely and replace it with a different model of leadership thinking. One of the most squandered energy forces on the planet is the lift of human energy. The Gallup Group tells us every year 60–70% of people are disengaged at work. That hasn't changed a bit in the last 50 or 60 years. I have a simple formula if you want to suck the human energy out of your organization. It's a 3-step process. Make sure you write these down. Number 1, have lots of meetings. Number 2, do not, under any circumstances, make any decisions in those meetings. And number 3, if perchance by mistake you happen to make a decision, that's okay, just don't act on it. Your organization should be able to answer 2 questions clearly, succinctly, and consistently throughout your organization. Who do we serve, and what would delight look like for them? And I'm going to make your homework assignment a little harder when you think about this. Take your customers, your employees, and your shareholders off the table. Of course you have to serve them. If you don't, you'll go out of business. When we start to discover the relevant principles, which I believe is exactly what this conference is about, and this is what you're going to listen for in every talk you hear. Once we discover these relevant principles that will cause our teams to fly, we will be able to fly to heights and distances that were previously unimaginable, even by the people who created these in the first place. When you add that title of storyteller to your business card, make your stories personal, make them simple, make a connection with your audience. As storytellers, we have to connect to our audience. This isn't about getting up here and say, look at me, aren't I great? It's like, no, I was in where you were. I've escaped, and I want to help you escape too. And I've learned along the way that the accuracy of stories is not as important as its authenticity. There's a famous story I tell inside of Menlo when we lead many of our tours. And one of my team members came up to me one day and she said, you know, Rich, I was part of the story you were telling. You don't tell it exactly the way it happened. And I said, awesome, Michelle, tell me more. She goes, no, I like the way you tell it. Just leave it the way it is. She said the details don't change the outcome of the story. Compelling history can help. We look for those lessons as humans, don't we? We look for those lessons from history, and we can use them to inspire us and ultimately make that memorable point. So the story I want to tell relates to a weakness of mine. Quarter pounder with cheese, large fry, Coca-Cola. At Detroit Metro Airport McNamara Terminal. It's the only place I do it. I swear, it's the only, Erica, I promise you, it's the only place I do this. Every time I was in this McDonald's, there was this guy named Mike. How did I know? Because his McDonald's badge said Mike. Older guy. And he was in this restaurant and he's hustling around. Every time I saw him, he was clearing the tables off, picking up all the stuff we carelessly left behind. But every time Mike got near me, I was amazed for this old guy, how fast he moved through this restaurant. And he'd get near me and say, how's it going? Have a safe flight. It was like the McDonald's server version of Amber Sulking, okay? Can I get you anything? Can I get you a napkin? I swear, it was amazing. I'm like, where does this guy get this energy? I don't know where Amber gets her energy. But this guy's working in McDonald's, and he brought that every single time I was there. Can I get you anything? Can I get you a napkin? And then one day he was off shift, and this young kid is pulling a sled full of garbage out of the back of the restaurant. And I'm watching him go by my table, and he leans in. He says, how's it going? Have a safe flight. Can I get you anything? Can I get you a napkin? And I'm sitting there and it is like, boom, what on earth is going on at this McDonald's? Here's the cool thing about this story, I think. Not that they did it, but I'm pretty sure Derek didn't go to McDonald's corporate and ask somebody, hey guys, could you form a committee to write a policy on doling out kindness and napkins? We want to try this in our company. No, he just did it, and you can too. You don't have to change the world, you just have to change your world. Start where you are. Because all of you, and here's the beautiful part of the McDonald's story, it was free. I never asked for a napkin, ever. If Derek at McDonald's in Detroit Metro Airport can do this, you can do this. Storytelling, I will tell you, is a fundamentally important act of leadership. Stories connect us from heart to mind, spirit to body, concept to reality. This is our connecting point. Stories are remembered, not because of what was said, but because of how they made you feel. Ask for people's stories. The next time you're with a colleague you don't really know that well, say, hey, can we go out to lunch? And when you sit down with them, ask them 2 simple questions. Tell me your life story. What's everything that happened between the day you were born and today? And then listen to what they say. They will summarize their life in 30 minutes, and what they will do is tell you the things that are most important to them. And then ultimately become story curators. What I mean by that is when you see a story playing out, try and remember it. Realize that something just happened that's really important. We got to tell this story again and again and again for future generations. Stories are as old as human civilization. Stories are told in anthems of nations, told around campfires, at the base of totems. This is a fundamental act of our humanity. As psychologist Rollo May once famously stated, the opposite of courage is not cowardice, but conformity. I'm urging you to think about adding storyteller title. Tell stories of your personal joy and what you're pursuing in the world. I just want to end with a quote that I had to write down because it's too good to mess up. This is a Native American proverb. Tell me the facts and I'll learn. You've probably all been in those kind of presentations, haven't you? The PowerPoint slides, the graphs, and okay. Tell me the truth and I'll believe. But tell me a story and it will live in my heart forever. And I believe those stories will live in your heart forever. Thank you very much.
My name is Sam Devanayagam. I'm the president of Parts Life, DeVal, and LC Engineers. When I graduated college, I went to work for an automotive aftermarket company. I worked for them for 12 years. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what happened during that time. And then I pivoted. I always wanted to start my own business and ended up becoming a defense contractor, recognized that the military needed some of the solutions that I had to offer. So I was fortunate to be able to find that and to be able to provide some solutions around it. I also feel like God has called me to teach those things that I have learned, those things that I'm still learning, right? I want to pass that on. I have 5 children. I want to make sure that there is a legacy that I leave, not only for my children, but for others who would care to be able to learn from me. What comes to mind when I say the word net? I'm going to park that for a moment in order to be able to ask you a question. And that is, how do we transform the culture that we are in today? Because this is a question that not only do we need to answer for ourselves, it's something that we need to answer for the leaders that we are multiplying, and then one day before God Himself. The world finds itself in a quagmire of difficult situations. There is wars, there is poverty, there is disease and destruction, there is the breakdown of the family, and the decline of organized religion. For millions of people, peace and happiness seem to be out of their grasp. It is in this context, or it is in this backdrop, that I ask you, how does your purpose shine through for greater good, for multiplying leaders and transforming culture? I'm excited to share with you 3 principles that I have learned or that I have walked in order to be able to lead self, to lead others, and to lead impact. But first of all, you may be wondering, who is this guy whose name belongs on a Scrabble board, and why should I listen to him? I would like for you to think of your own leadership journey. What in that job, first job that you had, gave you the ability to become who you are today? Are you leading in a way that 20 years from now, that somebody is going to remember you and say, you know what, that person gave me an opportunity, and because of that opportunity, I am at this particular place? In the year 2000, I made a mistake and I learned a very difficult lesson. This was an extremely difficult time for me because I had let myself down and I had let my family down. At that time, it was my wife, my three sons at that time. And I was wondering, what was I going to do? I was extremely overwhelmed by the mistake that I had made, and I continued to think about how was I going to get out of this mess. Eventually, I got a job working for a small company that made seals for the mobile construction business. I went to work, working there for 7 years, learning all the intricacies about technical sales and how to do strategic account management. All the while, God was actually preparing me on a journey on how for me to get my nets full. Eventually, in 2007, I started my own company, Parts Life. My idea was to take what I had learned in the seal business and to go back into the automotive business. Remember 2007? It was an extremely difficult time, and the automotive aftermarket, there was no juice in it. And for the next 3 years, my wife and I and 4 children, and then having a 5th child, completely struggled to be able to make ends meet. Eventually, in 2010, I got a purchase order for $80,000, which in 6 months, that purchase order grew to $3 million and gave me the oxygen that my business needed, that was struggling and really needed to come back and survive. 10 years and 2 acquisitions later, 2020 and 21 were good years with filled nets and reasonable profitability. So how did we do that? We used something that's called the buffalo culture. C12 actually talks about it, buffalo culture. What does that mean? The American buffalo, or the bison, when the storms come, they don't scatter like cattle do. What they do is they come together, they put their heads together, they put their head down, and then they charge the storm. What happens is that they escape and survive the storm. So that's exactly what we did. As an essential business, being in the Department of Defense, we had to work every day. We protected the vulnerable, motivated the healthy, and made sure that every single order, every single day, that we took care of the warfighter and took care of the taxpayer in keeping with our values and our mission. How do you create your leadership model? What are your core values? What are your principles that you need to be able to make this decision? By creating a leadership model, you have the ability to be able to guide your decision-making process. I believe that purpose and potential is God's job, The responsibility that I have is to be able to create an environment, and that is exactly what I did. The second principle that I want to talk about is fulfilling the felt needs for the people that are around you. A great example of that was who Jesus was, right? When he fed the 5,000, when he turned water into wine, when he had that conversation with that woman at the well in Samaria, all he was doing was taking care of a felt need. He was responding to a felt need, right? A very small thing. My father would teach me, if you take care of the little things, the big things will take care of themselves. The second thing that I have for you is, how do you take care of the culture of the organization? What I talk to you about a felt need is when you are doing the immediate things. When I talk about transforming culture, I'm talking about going a whole lot deeper. There was a book that I read called Neighborliness that talked about the fact that it takes 4 fundamental things in order to be able to transform society. It takes a job, it takes a place to live, it takes healthcare, and it takes education. Thank you, and God bless.
I'm Gary Ridge. I'm the chairman and CEO of WD-40 Company. I identified a long time ago that people weren't really creating positive, lasting memories with their leadership style. And I was given the opportunity to lead a company to be able to try and do that. And it's really rewarding to do that. We, as businesses, have the biggest opportunity to change the world. And if we can send people home happy, happy people create happy families create happy communities create a happy world, and I think we all agree that a little happier world would be a really good thing right now. Thank you. You know, when you have friends that are supporting you in life, it's really important. My friend Ron Carusi's in the audience here. He just wrote a new book called Be Honest. And he came up to me just before I came on today. You know what he said to me? Don't suck. Now, if his book isn't true about being honest, what is? Hi, I'm Gary Ridge. My official introduction to myself is I am the consciously incompetent, probably wrong, and roughly right chairman and CEO of WD-40 Company. And the 3 most important words I learned in my life is I don't know. So I looked around and I decided that I wanted to learn how could we build an organization where people actually wanted to go to work. You know, I was curious, and I said, I was reading some work on a plane, and it was from the Dalai Lama, and the Dalai Lama said, our purpose in life is to help others. And if we can't help them, at least don't hurt them. And what I saw all around me were all these people who were going to work every day, and as they went to work, they were a little bit happy, but when they came home, they were very unhappy. We were hurting them. In fact, this person that's in my pocket is Al. Let me tell you about Al. Very undesirable person. This is Al, the soul-sucking CEO. I thought, this is a great purpose, but then I wanted to change it. I thought our purpose in life is to help people be happy. Imagine a place where you go to work every day, you make a contribution to something bigger than yourself, you learn something new, you're protected and set free by a compelling set of values, and you go home happy. Because happy people create happy families create happy communities create a happy world, and we need a happy world. Now, at the same time, I happened to read this: pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work. And I thought, what a profound statement that was. But who was that from? Aristotle, who was born in 384 BC. So what does that mean? We're all very slow learners. This is not new news, my friends, not new news. A friend of mine, a friend of ours, Hubert Joly, just wrote a book recently called The Heart of Business. And he did some research that lines up with the research we heard earlier. During COVID, they surveyed 1,900 companies across the world, and only 16% of people who went to work every day were actually engaged, which means 84% of people went home disengaged. We were millions of people are being denied the chance to make a difference because of the behaviors of Al, the soul-sucking CEO. Culture is not an initiative. Culture is the enabler of all initiatives. So this is the business model that I put together. There are 4 things you need in business to be successful: people, purpose, passion, and products. So to build a culture, a sustaining culture, where people go home happy, the number 1 is you have to be dedicated to it's all about the people. The next one is purpose. Why do we exist? We exist to create positive, lasting memories, solving problems in factories, homes, and workshops around the world. So if anybody asks me what business we're in, I say we're in the memories business. If I'm on a plane and someone says, "What do you do?" I said, "I'm in the memories business." So you work for Disney? No, I said, I work for WD-40. So we're in the memories business, but it's not about just creating positive, lasting memories in the workshop, but it's at the homes of the people that work for WD-40 as well. The next thing you need to have is you need to have a compelling set of values. So what are values in an organization? Values are a written reminder of the only acceptable behavior in the organization. And they have to be hierarchical. Our number 1 value at WD-40 Company is we value doing the right thing. Our number 2 value is we value creating positive, lasting memories in all of our relationships. Our number 6 value is we value maintaining, sustaining the WD-40 economy, which means we need to be profitable. Values are also a great thing to be able to trigger conversations. Let me tell you a story. Our second value is we value creating positive, lasting memories in all of our relationships. I was in a meeting in our offices some time back, early one morning, and we were all together discussing a particular issue. And there was someone in that room that was not creating positive, lasting memories. In fact, they were adding toxins to the Petri dish that morning. It was coming out of them in droves. It wasn't the person that we normally knew. So what did I do? When the meeting was over, we left the meeting room and I said to this person, I'll call them Ray, "Ray, let's go for a walk." So we walked outside of our building, and I started looking behind a car, in a trash can, behind a tree, and Ray says, "What the hell are you doing?" I said, "Ray, I'm looking for you." "What do you mean you're looking for me?" "Ray, the you I know and love was not in that room today. What's on your mind? What's getting in your way? Talk to me." So we had a conversation. And Ray had had a really bad morning. But he brought all that toxin into that meeting. And what do we need to do? What did the science teacher at Des Moines Boys High School tell me? You need to remove those toxins as quickly as you can. So we had a bit of a conversation. At the end of it, we had a hug, and I said, everything's going to be okay. Next time, don't bring those into the meeting. You know what you did? He said, "I know what I did." He went inside, and he went to a couple of the people that were actually in that meeting, and he said, "Sorry." And what did they say? "Ray, that wasn't you today. Are you okay? Is there anything I can do for you?" Next morning, I observed people going to Ray. "Ray, how are you today, my friend? How are you, mate? Is everything okay?" So there's using values as a trigger to be able to redirect behavior and take away those toxins. Now, this bottom part of this model I have here is called the typhoon zone. And why do I call it the typhoon zone? A lot of our speakers before me have sort of touched on the balance between how much time do you spend on development and strategy and execution and the things that build engagement, or what we call will of the people. And unfortunately, most organizations get this out of balance. They spend a disproportionate amount of time on strategy and execution to really what matters, which is ensuring you have a tribal culture where people belong, that you have a true purpose that's worth getting up, you have values that protect them. If you get this model right, you build high will of the people, or a high employee engagement. And then finally, we want to remove fear. So we said, how do we take the fear of failure out of the language of our company? So we said, well, okay, we're not going to fail. We're going to change that. We're going to have learning moments. So we took the word failure out of our vocabulary. And now we have learning moments. And what's the definition of a learning moment? A positive or negative outcome that needs to be openly and freely shared to benefit all people. This model then sits on 4 pillars of care, candor, accountability, and responsibility. So what does care mean? Care means your empathy eats your ego instead of your ego eating your empathy. So the first one is care. The next one is candor. I love this. We define candor as no lying, no faking, no hiding. I believe most people don't lie. But in organizations with toxic cultures, what do they do every day? They fake and they hide. The next one is accountability. I wrote a book with Ken Blanchard called Don't Mark My Paper, Help Me Get an A. It's called Helping People Win at Work. Now, let me tell you the story of that. Ken was my professor at USD, and he was telling a story. He was teaching at one of the big universities, and Ken used to give out the final paper of the exam at the beginning of the class. And all of the administration and academic folks at the university say, Blanchard, what the hell are you doing giving out the final paper? He says, not only am I going to give out the final paper, what I'm going to do for the next 2 semesters, I'm going to help them learn the answers. Because life is not about some stupid distribution. It's about helping people get A's. And the next one is responsibility. And again, language is important. Let's make it as simple as possible. And we designed something called the Maniac Pledge, which I'm going to share with you in a moment. The other thing that we really like is removing the word manager. You manage your bank account. You manage inventory. You don't manage people. What do? You coach them. My daughter, Kate, is a dance teacher. And she said to me, Dad, the job of the dance teacher or the dance coach is to watch the dancers dance. And then to help coach them around the steps that could help them deliver the best performance ever. Accountability, responsibility is important. So some more words that are important to us is we developed something called the Maniac Pledge. And let me tell you a story about this, how this came about. I was out traveling around the world, and I got back to our office in San Diego, and this person couldn't wait to rush up to me and right in my face say, I'm angry. Why didn't I know about blah, blah, blah? I said, well, wait, what do you mean? Well, and they were paying me out. I should have known. Someone should have told me. You know, I'm more important than this. You know, this shouldn't happen without my knowledge. Rah, rah, rah. I said, you know, if you would have spent 1/10 of the time that you've just spent paying me out because you didn't know, finding out what you needed to know, you wouldn't have carried all this anger with you for the last 2 weeks, and I wouldn't be firing your ass right now. So we made the Maniac Pledge. Here it is. I am responsible for taking actions, asking questions, getting answers, and making decisions. I won't wait for someone to tell me. If I need to know, I am responsible for asking. I have no right to be offended that I didn't get this sooner, and if I'm doing something others should know about, I'm responsible for telling them. So we said, what does that belonging mean? Everybody in this room today has left a company, a party, or even a relationship because they didn't feel like they belonged. So I want you to come with me on a journey. We're going to go back in a time capsule. We're going to go to the middle of my homeland, Australia, thousands of years ago. And we're going to peek from behind a coolabah tree, standing next to a billabong. And we're going to observe the tribal leader. What is the tribal leader doing? The tribal leader is teaching tribe members to throw a boomerang. Why? Because a boomerang is the tool of survival. If the tribe aren't good at throwing boomerang, the tribe will not thrive and survive. What are the other attributes of a tribe? They have values. Next one is belonging. That's the tribal culture. Next one is future focus. If that tribe that was next to the billabong, and if you want translation, billabong equals lake. A little Australian translation for you, billabong equals lake. If that billabong was drying up and the leaders of the tribe were not looking to the next source of water, the tribe would go extinct. So one of our tribal attributes is we need to be also future focused. People within the tribe have to have specialized skills. My friends in Fiji were telling me that in our tribe we have people who are better at fishing. Some are better at making huts. And in fact, they actually have a tribe member in the tribes in Fiji who are actually with the responsibility of succession planning. Then there are warriors. Absolutely, we're here. A group of people that come together to protect and feed each other. And finally, celebration. We love to celebrate. Life is a gift. Don't send it back unwrapped. Unwrap that puppy. We celebrate in good times, and we celebrate in times that aren't so good. But what are we celebrating? We're celebrating that we are this group of people that come together to protect and feed each other. What about the servant leader? The leaders that we all want to be. What are some of their attributes? Some of the ways that they're building really fine cultures. They involve and they love their people. They are there to make a positive difference in people's lives every day, to help them step into the best version of their personal self. They're actually nice to be around. Leaders are always in servant leadership mode. We're here to serve. Leaders are expected to be competent. Great leaders are connected with high emotional intelligence. Great leaders love learning moments. Great leaders have a heart of gold and a backbone of steel. Because this culture stuff is simple. But I tell you, it's not easy. And time is not your friend. No good deed ever goes unpunished. But it's worth carrying on to make sure it happens. Leaders are champions of hope. Leaders know that micromanagement is not scalable. Leaders do what they say they're going to do, and leaders love feedback. So you might say, okay, Gary, this is all well and good. This is a whole lot of, whatever. Does it work? Well, let me share you the results of our employee opinion survey. This is the 2022 Will of the People survey. We just took it. 98% we have a 93% employee engagement. We're one of the few companies that have publicly stated one of our goals for the last 10 years is to get our employee engagement to 95%. In COVID, our employee engagement actually went up half a percentage point. 93% of our people globally engaged, operating out of 17 offices in 17 countries around the world. And 98% of our people say they love to tell people they work at WD-40 Company. I know what results are expected of me. 96% of people say they know what results are expected of me. Do they know what an A looks like? Absolutely, they do. Why? Because we want to applaud them and reward them for getting that A to make them feel good. I feel that my opinions and values are a good fit with the WD-40 Company culture. 97% of people are aligned with our values. They're going to work every day using their values to make decisions because they don't have to bark up the hierarchy to make some stupid decision. In some companies, they're quacking up the hierarchy. Quack, 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 can I do this? Quack, quack, quack. Then they get to the King Mallard. Quack, quack. They're in Al's office looking for permission to do something. Check this one out. 97% of our people say they respect their coach. Respect their coach. Why? Because the coach is there to help them step into the best version of their personal self. That's why they go to work every day to help them be the best they can be. We exist to create positive, lasting memories, solving problems in homes and workshops around the world for the people who use our product and the people who work in our company. Imagine a place where you go to work every day, you make a contribution to something bigger than yourself, you learn something new, you feel safe and are protected by a compelling set of values, and you go, I'm happy. One of my favorite quotes, Nelson Mandela, it always seems impossible until it's done. We have the chance to change the world. So let's unwrap this thing and go make the world a better place. Thank you. It always seems impossible until it's done.
I'll be the one by your side through the good and the hard times, when we're laughing, when we're hurting. I'll be the one that you need through the love and tragedy, when we're winning, when we're losing. Take my hand, there's a better life ahead. Take my word, with you and me, there's a better life. There's a better life. There's a better life. There's a better life. I'll be the heart that's yours through the peace and dark wars, when we're loving, when we're fighting.